Back to Crossroads of Cognizance, the place where we have created a live discussion and community space that incorporates all things magic, spirituality, and energy. As two professionals in that field, we are here to bring you insights, our learning, our experiences, and to share community space with yours. So, if you have found this stream, if you're normally a part of it, welcome. If this is your first time, you're going to want to click that like and subscribe button so you know when we go live on YouTube, and then follow us on Facebook so that you know when we've popped live. And today is an interesting discussion. It sounds slightly reminiscent of things that we've talked about before, but I feel like we're putting a new spin on it. And today we are going to be talking about movement versus stillness with regard to magical work and energy work, and kind of how we can use them to enhance the things that we're doing and kind of change the energy of things. But before we get too deep into the topic, we always have to do introductions. So, I am Dahlia Rose over here on the East Coast. I am the founder of the Conduit School. I serve my community as a healer, a teacher, and a conduit for high vibrational energies. I teach my students through guidance and spiritual development, energy work classes, meditation, crystal work. I support their healing journey and with counseling. And ultimately, my goal is to change the face of healing as well as the culture of healing itself. But, I'm not on the show by myself. Thank goodness.
If you were, it would still be a great show.
I don't know about that.
My name's Katrina Rasbold. I'm half of Crossroads Occult, crossroadsoccult.com. And my husband, Eric, and I make and sell magical products, hoodoo products, energy work products, things of that nature. I'm also a published author of 30 something books. I don't know. I lost track. Those are all available on Amazon.com. And trust me, there is only one Rasbold on Amazon.com that isn't me or Eric. And I also do spell work for people by remote, do cleansings by remote, and also readings by remote. I semi-retired, so all of my work, with the exception of some festival work that I do twice a year, is by remote. And that's what I do. And I'm really excited for today's topic because when you think about stillness and movement, it covers almost every aspect of magic. So that's pretty exciting.
Every aspect of energy work too, but I don't think it gets a close enough lens. What is typical in, say, a Reiki class or a magic class or an energy work class is to just talk about the things that we do. At least that was my schooling. And it took a bit of a personal journey to figure out, okay, well, why do we, move our hands in this motion? How do I really make this potent other than these particular symbols or signs or invocations? What's happening? It's kind of like pulling the veil back on why this seems unrelated, but again, I didn't think anybody was really paying attention to it when I found out that we talk to plants. They love that. They grow when you talk to them. But the reality of the situation is they're feeding off the carbon dioxide from you, and that's why they're happy and they grow once you talk to them. So, there's the outward lens of this is really cool when I do it. And then there's the close-up picture of like, here is what actually is happening, and that's important. And that's where movement and stillness come in, I in my opinion.
I completely agree. And like I said, to me, it touches on every aspect of energy work, every aspect of magic, with kitchen witchery. If we're influencing people with food, what we want to think of is, and this is in my book, Goddess in the Kitchen, do we want to wake something up, or do we want to put it to sleep? Do we want to soothe something, or do we want to invigorate something? With weather magic, do we want to instigate and build and make movement and create a certain kind of weather? Or do we want to push that rain away because we've got an outdoor event planned? With healing, do we when we're moving through those chakras. Are they locked up? Are they still? Are they hyperactive? Are they moving too much? Do we want to instill movement? Do we want to lock it up? Relationships. Do we want to get this relationship moving and get things kicking up? Do we want to heat it up a little bit? Or do we want to just kind of push that relationship away and get this person to soothe their, cool their jets a little bit? With money magic, do we want to build it and get it to flow, or do we want to keep it stable so it doesn't go away? We can look at so many ways that movement and stillness come into play with our conversations about energy work and magic.
Right. And we live in such a movement based society that I think this is a great opportunity to bring the stillness into it. There is very appropriate times where stillness is warranted. And so, with that being the case, one of my favorite ways to work with, energy movement versus stillness is through crystal grid work or through my healing sessions. Like Katrina was saying, when you're moving through the chakra system, one of the things that I found myself doing the most when I was more active in the healing sessions was doing extractions. That I want something to move, but I had an opportunity to bring stillness into that as well because I needed that entity to settle so that I could get it, wherever it needed to go or to transmute it in some way. So, and then there's the feng shui of it. When I had my shop, we were fortunate to be visited by an amazing, like an angel card reader. Her name was Beth, and I mean, she was like angel incarnate. And so she came in and she was like, she already started channeling, and she's like, the angels want you to put a fountain in here because water churns up their energy so that they can, bless the space and kind of be a part of it on a regular basis. And so these were situations where building the energy was appropriate and some stability was needed as well. And there were tools that we used in order to get those things accomplished.
One of the things when you're talking about I had to smile when you said the angels want you to put a fountain in here. I'm like, the angels better pony up some coin for some fountain first.
But, luckily, Michael's was having a sale.
One of the things that we really look at, and I touched on this with the kitchen magic and the healing and that sort of thing, is that when we're talking about what as energy movers and energy receptors in our clients will cause that movement, that excitement, that stirring up, or that calming and stillness, will be the five senses, because that's one of the primary aspects of magic and energy work is what are you sensing with your known senses. I mean, we can also bring sixth sense and spiritual knowing into this, but really when we're talking about the science of this, which is always exciting to explore, we can look at what are you hearing that is changing you from stillness to movement and vice versa. And that can be things like different types of music that really get your energy going or calm it down, drumming and rattles and rain sticks. And what are you hearing? How is that affecting you? Taste. With food, like I said, with kitchen witchery, our two questions are, do we want to wake it up or do we want to soothe it? Do we want to put it to sleep? And there are certain foods that are very calming and relaxing. And there are certain foods that are really spicy and will get the energy flowing in you. Caffeinated foods, chocolate, for instance, is very stimulating. What are we touching? What are we feeling? I was thinking about this when we discussed the topic. And, if you want to wake somebody up, I mean, if you slap them across the face, they're going to wake up. If you want to soothe somebody and you just gently put your cool hands against their face, that can be very calming, but it's the same contact. It's just done differently. What do we smell? What types of aromatherapy are we using? What types of incenses are coming into play? And oils and familiar scents, of course, are the fastest way to put us in a place where we were before. Is now for me, back when we used to stand in line to do things, which we don't so much anymore, standing in line at the bank, or standing in line at the grocery store. If I caught a whiff of an old boyfriend's cologne,
Oh, that stops you in your tracks. It's like, wait a minute.
wow. And a lot of it can depend on whether that was a positive or a negative experience. Are you having a fight or flight, a fear response? Are you having an erotic response? What smells? You smell your dad's cologne, and it can smell really comforting and safe, or it can smell really scary. But scents are really evocative for us. And then what are we seeing? What are we looking at? We already know that colors have a huge impact. That's why we don't have red prisons. Because and mental wards, we want those soothing mint colors, because do we want it to be still and calm, or do we want it to be invigorated and awake, like McDonald's has that bright yellow and red going for it to make us hungry. So we as practitioners, not just elevated healers like Dahlia and myself, anybody can affect whether there's stillness or motion just by the sensory perceptions you surround yourself with.
That sensory piece reminds me of how, in Reiki, I would teach the students about like what is Reiki in its most basic form. And a lot of it came down to getting the body as relaxed as possible in order for it to start the self-healing process. And then there would be other energetic things that we could apply, symbols, chants, your own personal touch, like crystals or oils or aromatherapy or what have you, because I always like my students to kind of make it their own. But the very basis of it was to calm, bring that stillness in, that peace, that calm. And the way that people respond to sound healing sessions, and the way that they respond to group work where soft, wavy tones are implemented, shows you the power of stillness and letting things kind of wash over you or wash through you. So we get to kind of combine stillness and movement in those moments. Um, you know, One thing that I was also reminded of with regard to spell work is how often, like if I saw something from you or from Gladys, or purchased something for movement, there would be like a pepper, like crushed red pepper flakes in it, or something like that was something that would be present, or spices like that in spell work.
Absolutely. And when you're talking about creating that stillness, I think that one of the reasons that's so effective with us now is very recent. I think it's because we are pushed to such momentum as adults in our society.
Mm.
And so getting us to a place of stillness so that healing can occur is really difficult,
Oh, yeah.
because we're wanting to move, we're wanting to do and do and do and do more and produce more. And so we have to get to that quiet place. But what had occurred to me as you were saying that is that when we are creating stillness or activity in a magical situation or energetically with a client, it's always an opposite that we're invoking. So, for instance, with me as well, I have some clients that people almost bring in wheelchairs. I mean, they've had a curse for so long, or they've been so affected by trauma that they can't function.
Mm.
They can't move. They're just sitting there. They practically have to be rolled onto the treatment table. And in those people, we want to imbue energy rather than calm. We want to wake them up. Hey, are you in there? Come out, come to me, talk to me. Let's get you back in this body again. And
Yeah.
so we're always looking at an opposite. We're looking at an offset. So when we're trying to push that stillness in, it's because something is hyperactive. If we're wanting to evoke activity in something, it's because something is locked up. and we want to get it moving again. We want the WD-40 on those gears so that everything starts turning and moving again. And so we become a, a kind of effect that has to decide what's needed. And it's usually not that hard. Just by talking to somebody for a few minutes, you can tell if they're wound up. You can tell if they're out there because their energy is so divided that they can't work on themselves anymore. You can tell when somebody has shut down from abuse to the point that they're not hearing, seeing, feeling anything.
Right.
And you've got to bring, so we're always responding to a deficit with an overabundance almost in the hope of balancing that out somehow.
Absolutely. It's interesting. You tend to get the people that are wheelchaired and rolled onto the table. I tend to get a lot of anxious people. And common phrases when coming into the shop or getting on the phone with me are like, man, I just feel so at ease now. Like, I can finally put down all that like prickly, spiky energy. I can put it down. And even these things are accomplished by tools that either enhance or remove. So, you know, there would be movement used to kind of push out the excess energy through burning sage or burning sage wasn't exactly my you it was common to hear me say I don't really like sage. I don't like the smell. It wasn't me, but I love
Noted.
right. I am very much a cedar burning person. I have no idea why cedar and I have such a great relationship, but it is a catch-all. Juniper as well. And so it was common to see me burning juniper, which when getting into energy work for me, fire and smoke are movement kinds of energy, but they were used to set us up for that moment of stillness. And so we'd push out the excess energy and allow that to, go wherever it needed to go, get through the conversation, and then finally entering in the space of stillness once on the table. Again, there would be some combination of stillness and movement from there based on the crystals that were used, based on, whatever energetic tactics were available. So
Smokes are definitely an excellent way to, I can't think of the best way to put it. I don't want to say clear the air because they're actually fogging up the air, but to put you, it's almost like they're a conduit to put you in contact with your client's deepest needs.
mhm.
And they will wake up the idea within you of what your client needs. So to me, when I use any types of smokes, they're affecting me as much as they're affecting the client. It's almost creating a bridge between us. And I use smokes quite a bit. I have a lot of juniper in my banishing uh, mixes that I use. And that's because juniper is such an aggressive cleaner
Yeah.
and will just clear out so much stuff. And I use sweetgrass. I use cedar quite a bit as well. I enjoy the incense cedars that are so prominent out here where I live. And I do use a lot of sage. I use white sage, black sage. I use sagebrush. I use Shasta sage. And I use almost all of them equally.
Mm.
And I like to create a mix. I also like to put some lavender in my mix for cleansing because I do get a lot of people that need to calm, that are extremely anxious because they tend to come to me when nothing else works. I'm their kind of last resort. And so they're either really hyped and falling apart or they're super low energy. I get all of the extremes.
Mm.
I rarely get somebody who says, I think I'm starting to feel something go sideways. Do you think you can help me course correct before it gets crazy? It's always after the crazy has happened. And, oh, well, maybe this person can help me now. A lot of times lately, this is, we used to talk about trends. One of the trends I'm getting right now are people who literally come to me too late.
Oh,
And that's a place where their situation is so dire that by remote, I can't work with them.
oh, interesting.
they need hands-on in-person treatment. I mean, these are people that are hearing voices, people who are feel that they're being attacked on the astral constantly.
Mm,
And in those situations when you're working by remote with somebody, it's harder to detect what needs to happen, because it could very easily be something of, hey, you just need a magical liaison to go in and separate you from whatever's troubling you and negotiate your release and get you safe and then work on healing you. Or it could be that you genuinely need mundane mental health care
right.
and have a chemical imbalance that's causing you to believe these things are happening. And when you're working with someone remotely, it gets really difficult to distinguish those, because you're talking to the person involved and they really believe the reality of what's happening to them because it's real for them. But it's harder to be objective because you're having to work through them rather than have anybody else in their world give you some input. And so then it can be really hard to know, do we need stillness? Do we need activation? What do we need here?
Mm. I can see where some of that could come into play and be definitely challenging. With touching on the herbs that you mentioned, I think it's cool that even those have their own stillness versus movement bend to them. So like you said with the lavender, if I need stillness or peace or calm, I'm going to reach for lavender. I'd also throw rosemary into that category. It's not really invigorating,
Definitely.
it's more of a soother with its property.
Angelica. Angelica is also wonderful to put into that mix. It got its name for a reason. It's very interactive with the angels. And
Mm,
so if you're wanting to calm uh, and you're bringing in the soothing angels, now do not, just like with fairies, don't make the mistake of believing that all angels are soothing and comforting. They are not. But if you want to bring in your soothing angels, then Angelica can be a great mix to add in there. I don't love to burn it on its own, but it does nicely in blending with the other ones that you mentioned.
I love what you said about the angels too. I mean, it's so like when we're talking about movement and stillness, invoking angels is part of that energetic or magical process as well. And I would talk to people a lot about like, okay, well, you've had an archangel show up here, so that means like shit's about to hit the fan. They are all about change. They are not
Yep.
here to rub your back and be like boo 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 boo. No, they are here because things are about to get weird and wild. So,
Truth.
yeah, yeah, those archangels, boy, they get work done.
And the
Um,
spontaneous manifestation of one, like you were saying, is definitely high end. We call the archangels often into our ritual space, invite them there to observe, lend energy and influence. But when they just fucking show up, that's
ugh.
yeah, yeah. It's like when you're working and you're at work in some major facility and the big boss walks in, or you're at school and the principal comes in, everybody gets super super quiet. It's exactly like that, because they are not playing. They do not want their time wasted,
Nope.
and they're ready to make sure somebody there is going to understand their purpose and why they're there. So it's quite an experience.
It is. It is. Now, if somebody is going through a healing session or trying to invoke healing for themselves, right? Because there's two sides to the coin. There's the amount of work that you can do for yourself, and there's the amount of work that you're going to go and get assistance with. If you are feeling stuck, Katrina already mentioned some of these, like you're feeling like you're on your last leg, you can't move forward much. um, if you are feeling like some level of stagnation in the things that are happening in your life, you're not quite sure where to apply energy or work, anything that you do can involve movement of things. Burning things is one of my favorites. I probably shouldn't say this on the show, but our shop did not have smoke detectors, so it was fire all day.
We specifically looked for a place that had or heat detectors and not smoke detectors.
Right.
so that we could burn our incense and our sage and all that.
Right. And it was a blast, the ability to release on behalf of others using fire. It was a movement kind of thing. So, for our viewers, if you're not sure what's going on, you can do something as simple as write down on a piece of paper. I prefer tissue paper because it burns really well. I do have some of this burning stuff down to a science, but tissue paper burns nice. It burns complete. You can write down, like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, but I let it go, crumple it up and get into, intention and prayer about it and put it in a fire or, light it or attach it to a candle or what have you, and get some decent movement work going to just let some stuff go. Anything. Sometimes, you move that little corner pebble and it releases more than you thought. Sometimes you have to do a couple of pebbles or a couple of stones to kind of get the water flowing again. But either way, you're doing something. Just like, if you've been stuck, sitting still is not ideal. But if you, at least make your walk to the mailbox, you may find a shift in your circumstances or in your inner challenges.
One of the things I have people do if they feel like they've lost their way or nothing's moving or they just can't get things flowing is I have them rearrange the furniture in their house.
Yes.
Because not only does that shift the energy in the house, the feng shui energy, but also you literally take a different path in the room. And so the movement that you're creating is different from what you had last week or the week before. And that can cause that energetic shift. I really liked what you said about it being two-sided and about the energy and the work that we do for a client, but they have to do their work and they have to be receptive to the energy that we're doing. And this is one of the big challenges I have when people often, and I'm talking many times in a week, will contact me and ask if am willing to do work on somebody else without them knowing and without their permission. And I do often, a lot of times, I would say easily half the work that I do in my practice is somebody who is doing work on another person. They need something to happen with another person. And I don't have an ethical problem with that. I do, as I'm going into the energy of the work, ask permission from the spirit of the person, even though they might not be consciously aware that their spirit is giving permission. But if I'm getting a lot of resistance, I'll refund the person's money and say, I'm not comfortable doing this. They just are really not into me helping. But when that person has not offered their consent verbally or written, sent me an email. If that person is not on board with this, even if they want it, it doesn't work as well. And
Mm.
I'm very quick to tell people this, that's the biggest problem with taking your magical work outside of the conversation so that it's me talking to a client about somebody who's not in the conversation.
Mhm.
And invariably, again, they're wanting stillness or motion in another person. We might do a hot foot so that somebody goes out and gets a job or is finding their own place to live or is motivated in some way. We want to get them moving. Or we might do a binding on somebody so that they're not harming another person or creating problems with their behaviors. We might put them in a mirror box so that they just sit very still and reflect on their behavior and how that has impact. So just always be aware when you order work for another person, that doesn't mean it's not going to work. It does mean you don't have the added incentive and value of that person being receptive and opening to the work on a conscious level. They can on a subconscious level, but it really helps when that person is really on board for that. But likewise, I can have people that come to me receptive and open, but something inside them really doesn't want it.
Mm.
Like, uh, oh my gosh, I got laid off. I have to get another job because I can't pay my bills. So I really need you to do work to get me another job. And I'm here burning candles like mad, but it's not working because a part of them doesn't want to go to work. They're tired. They want to rest for a while. And so something in their spirit is resisting this. I'm getting a job because I have to. I'm getting a job because I'm forced to, not because I want to.
Right.
And so really that consent and having their energy fully on board with what you're doing is so important in creating movement and stillness.
I actually had a personal experience with this probably about 2 weeks ago. Um, I had an amazing friend who wanted to gift me something that they found amazing. It was like a candle and a reading, and this person who was supposed to be doing the reading and making this candle on behalf of me and what they found in the reading could not get through my energy field because I was like, walls up. I'm usually walls up most of the time. And, that person really earned my respect because they were like, hey, like, I know you want this to be a surprise, but you're gonna have to tell her that I'm not trying to cause her harm. And I say this story and share it to say this was a positive circumstance. This was like, I want to do this for a friend, feel called to inspire them, what have you. And it's a great product. And so even when the best of intentions are involved, you still have to have that sort of energetic permission for the movement to occur, for the movement or the stillness to occur. Now, as you were talking about doing something on behalf of another person, it flashed in my mind this image of um, how a lot of people are going through depressed states. And that's for one reason or another. It could be economically, it could be PTSD from some things, it could be anything at all. If you are supporting that person, you can bring movement things into their space. Again, this is again maybe a place for permission. But what if you brought in a painting with flowing water that, they would see at least every day? That's going to cause a level of energy and magic that allows them to focus on something different. Or maybe bring in a candle that if you're doing some sort of daily care, you are the one that lights that candle. And it's just like, oh, I just wanted to invigorate the room and, do something of that nature. You can even go into using colors, bring them a blanket or a pillowcase that has either an invigorating color or a stillness kind of color, like a blue or something deeply colored. A purple is kind of on the fence for me. I think it depends on the person, but like blue, deep 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 colors may help a person kind of feel at ease if they've been anxious for a while. But this is all energy work, because there are frequencies and energies that come through those objects just as they are. And then you can set further intentions.
Absolutely. And the there are a lot of thoughts on the idea of energetically affecting another person. We do it all the time, with or without magical influence. There's
Mhm.
plenty of times we try to talk a friend into doing something that we think that they should do that they're not doing. There's plenty of times we try to get our kids to do stuff that they're not doing that we think they should. And so the idea of bringing influence to bear on somebody isn't new, and it isn't usually deemed as something horrible by society. But as we moved through the history of magical work and energetic work, it became something bad to influence a person's energy without their permission. A lot of that I feel comes from the fear that people brought up around spell work and energy work through the Middle Ages and that sort of thing. But I mean, it's to some point polite to not, energetically affect another person without their permission. But at the same time, sometimes you have to. I mean, there are going to be times that that person simply isn't positioned to make good decisions for themselves. And people have said, now all of my kids, I've got 6, and they're all adults. And people have said to me, well, surely you don't influence your kids magically without their permission. I'm like, Have you met me? Oh my God. All the time. All the time. And especially when I'm in situations where they don't want to hear it or they're not listening, like, oh, the hell you are. And in we go. So I'm a little bit more free with my kids than I am with the average person. But certainly, I mean, sometimes you need the one I burn most for people without their permission is the all seeing eye.
Mm.
And that is just open your eyes, see what's happening. Look at this relationship or look at this job. Just get the truth that you're hiding from yourself and then make good choices with that information. So I'm telling you, lots of your mamas, lots of your friends, lots of your sisters and your aunties and your partners are working magic to get you to do or see a certain thing or not do a certain thing.
They're
And
all
I
reaching
know
out to
they're
Katrina.
in my inbox.
You're like, wait a minute, is that why? Yeah, I mean, it
That's
definitely
why.
happens. So, here we are talking about these things, and it's a great opportunity for us to put the power back in your hands. Like if you were just like if you know you need the movement, there's so many opportunities. I've even been in situations where I wasn't able to burn something, spray something, didn't have an oil on hand. These are rare moments, by the way, because that stuff lives in my travel companion bags. I have doubles of things because I'm
The
like,
go
no,
bags. Yeah.
right. It's like literally like a magical hoe bag. And so, normally I have those products, but if there is some, reason why I can't use them, it would be bad to use them, not allowed. Everybody's very sensitive to smell these days. Anyway, you can do things like clapping your hands just to break up the energy around a space, or if you are walking into maybe like a party or a friend's house and you're like, I don't know how I feel, they're gonna look at you strange for clapping your hands, but it's going to be like, why are you doing it? Not, oh, they're doing that wild magical stuff again, so it's a way to get energy moving. I find that most households have stagnant energy, kind of just, because we live our lives. We go in, we go out, and nothing really moves. So, a little clapping here and there isn't going to hurt anybody. You could stomp too, but I think you'll get nastier looks for that one, for sure.
Absolutely. And I like to take basalt massage stones and smack them together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
You might
given.
get a couple of strange looks for that. Like, why are you clapping rocks in my house?
Percussion, man.
You feel beat.
You can also spray your hands with magical or sacred sprays or holy water and just trail them along the doorways a little bit here and there. And
I just wanted to feel the door frame. Oh, these are magical doors. Oh, so amazing. Sprinkles oil.
yeah,
Now,
or
you
just
know,
pretend that you're cleaning the doors and use Chinese wash or something.
now, we the movement piece of it, is there. One of the stillness things that I thought about in thinking about our talk today was dirt. Um, either used on the altar, maybe I did recommend this one time. I don't know if the person ever did it, but getting like a large planter pot and putting your feet in it for the dirt and the soil in moments when you can't reach dirt or soil because of one reason or another. Um, and to this day, I wonder if they ever did that. But to pour energy into, to create a stillness for yourself when you're having trouble. You could do that with your hands too. It doesn't have to be your feet. But dirt is a great way to invite stillness into the home. That could be, you get off the phone with somebody intense or somebody draining, and you go over to your plants and you're just like, I just need a minute, and you stick your fingers in the soil.
And you
And
kill the plant.
no, they're so good at transforming energy. It's fine.
Well, dirt is the only one of the four elements that is not in motion.
Yep.
And, to be in motion, dirt requires one of the other elements. It has to be blown by the wind or moved by the water. And so dirt is the ultimate stillness because of the grave. I mean, it's going to keep us still. So definitely a good choice for getting things nice and calm.
Yeah, or putting things to rest, or allowing something to settle. If you are still anxious about a circumstance that you've been through, this is, I think, like something akin to PTSD or any of the levels that occur before PTSD happens. Dirt can be a great additive to your work, even if you just got a cup of dirt on your altar and you're just holding it and spending time with it or something like that. Dirt by your bedside in a jar or a glass. Those kinds of things can be brought in for energy work purposes or magical purposes.
Also, remember a lot of your rocks are made of dirt.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just dirt that's been there a long time.
Pressurized with gas and all of
That's
that.
right. And that's why
And
they're so good at grounding. If it's not a brightly colored stone, it'll ground you right down.
right, right. And I love river rocks for that reason, because you still get a little bit of motion with them. Um, I thought of, in terms of stillness, like if you're grieving, ash would be a great tool. Like if you've just been, you can either create the ash, or you can, find it from the fireplace and try to gather some things. But I thought ash is like, bringing in the dirt aspect, but also being able to work with the aftermath of something. You're dealing with the remnants of something. And so I feel like when a person is going through their grieving process, a lot of what comes up is the remnants of something. So you can bring ashes into your practice as a stillness tool.
Well, and ash is the stillness of fire.
Yes,
So when the fire goes still, that's when you get the ash.
absolutely. And that's why it works. Oh, and Denise is mentioning some movement she did in her home, but her kids weren't with it. Have been there as I chase my children around the house with sprays. Sprays would be for movement, and they're booking it away from me. And
One
my
of the
daughter.
things that made me laugh, Dahlia, and your kids may do this too. Um, when we were, of course, my kids were raised basically in a magical household, but it was never specifically this is for this and this is for this and this is for this. I didn't communicate with them a whole lot about it unless they asked, and often they didn't. I had a situation come up about, gosh, now it's been probably 10 or 12 years ago, where all of my kids were in my house at the same time. And this was the last time this happened. They don't get along, and so they tend to not be in the same place together.
Hmm.
And I don't remember, I remember something had been said or something happened where things were getting a little bit heated. And I just took out my sage stick and started saging a little bit. And it wasn't overt. I wasn't chasing them with it or anything. I swear to God, Dad, this is a lie. All six of them sat down in unison. In unison, they all just dropped because they had been so conditioned over time that sage means
Cut the crap.
calm. Right, right. And they don't, I think Delina's the only one that actually sages her home. But it was
Interesting.
just so funny that these are 30 and 40-year-old people. Boom, sat down like they were, like their puppet strings got cut or something.
That's amazing, though. And you brought up something that I think that most people assume when you are a magical practitioner, an energy worker, or something like that, that you train your kids. I mean, I had people come in the shop all the time. They'd be, "Oh, your kids must know all the crystals," and I was like, "No, they come in here, they see rocks, and they're like, I don't know, it's pretty. Can I give it to my friend?" And I'm like, "You got to pay for that. Like, what are you doing?" Um, and there are things they don't like, and there are things that they don't understand, but like on the other side of the magical energy work, I think that they kind of see it as a connection, right? So my mom is doing something, it looks like she cares about me, so whatever, I'll deal with it. But it's never like, okay, I must study the old ways.
Oh,
And
Lord
no,
help us.
there's
No,
never
no.
that.
Of my 6 adults, now I have 5 sons and a daughter. Um, of all of them, there's not one single one that knows a third of what I know.
Hmm.
I mean, they just didn't have that huge of an interest in it. And
Right.
this is how traditions get lost. I mean, this is why we have to go back to old ancient grimoires and shit like that to find out what our ancestors did, because nobody asked and nobody cared. And your interest just was in other places. And eventually those people are dead and you can't talk to them about what they did or what was important. I can't tell you how many people come to me and say, oh gosh, I wish I could talk to Tia so and so, or my grandmother or my Oma about when she used to rub the egg on me, or when she used to do this, what she knew, what she did. None of that becomes important until later, and then often they're gone. But
Mhm.
no, I've got my oldest son is into tarot cards, and he's a very accomplished reader and channel. He's a better
Nice.
channel than I am,
Wow.
but none of the rest of it really interests him. And my second son, not interested at all. My third son, not interested at all. My daughter, probably of all of them, has the biggest mix of information. She knows a lot.
Mm.
She identifies as a witch, and she's a really great practitioner. She knows a lot of stuff. My son Dylan, not interested at all. And my son Nathan is the one that works with oils extensively. He creates his own sprays and oils and all that. But the rest of it just is of no consequence to him at all. So no, absolutely. And very few of them have actually been in ritual with me. I mean, they
Mm.
they just wasn't important to them at all. And I never pressed it on them. It was never, you need to do this, you have to learn this. It was, hey, this is a weird shit thing that I do. If you're interested, I'm all there for you. I'd be excited to teach my kids, but none of them are interested.
Right.
Now,
It's the
the
interest part.
case, if I talk to them and they're having a tough time, I'm like, honey, do you want me to burn a money candle for you? Yes. Yes, please. Do you want mommy to burn a soulmate candle for you? Oh, I'm so lonely. There's no atheist in trenches. Foxhole.
We'll see. We'll see where things go. At 13 and 6, I don't quite get those requests. And I think that has more to do with this, like the particular generation. I mean, I think that the generation that my oldest son is growing up in, they are so determined to do things on their own. I mean, there were times when I'm like, hey, that seems like you might need an adult in that situation. And he's like, no, we're talking about it. And I'm just like, okay, let you figure it out and do your mistake thing, but I really think you need some help. Um, and I think that speaks to, like, on topic with the show, that movement piece. We have pushed the following generations, and every generation forward, we have pushed them to be movement based.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
People, you got to get this thing done. And so some of the things that we are talking about here could be helpful to soothe them. And I think that's why you're seeing an increase in anxiety, is because we push so much movement.
Yeah.
So
I agree. And I think that, what is the most common thing that we hear now from about the younger generation? We hear adults complaining that they're lazy and that they aren't motivated and they don't have any drive to do anything. And I think it's because we just burned it out in them.
right,
And
they're tired.
we also created an environment where their efforts don't pay off.
Hmm.
So when I was growing up, it was understood that if you did what you were supposed to do and went to college and got a degree, you had every expectation that you could support yourself on your own, that you could support yourself and a partner, and
Right.
that you could have children and that you could raise those kids in a comfortable way because, man, you did college. And now, no matter what you do, it's really difficult to support yourself on your own. And so young people are getting the message of, it doesn't matter what I do. I'm not going to be able to afford a house anyway. I'm not
Right.
going to be able to afford to buy a car anyway.
Society did not evolve with their needs,
No.
either through pay structures or to say, hey, school isn't as important because we're not raising factory workers and what have you.
Yeah. So they
Um,
sat the fuck down. They said, this is something that we can't win. I can't win this game. And I don't know how to move. And so I am absolutely paralyzed with indecision and not having a game plan here. And then we
right.
get mad that they're not moving because we want them on that hamster wheel trying. And so it's a really ugly situation out there in the world between stillness and motion. And that translates, I think, to what we do.
Absolutely. 100%. And, this is a great place to say all the things that we're talking about, using water to kind of get things going or certain colors and things like that. We are not being flippant in any way. Like, if you are one of those burnt out people or stuck people, evaluate why that is and get help, or whatever it is that you need. It's not like we're saying, okay, we'll put a red blanket over them and they will all of a sudden bloom to life. It's not going to happen that way. And as we maybe incorporate some of these things, we can also inspire them to change society so that these things, the motivation comes back, the desire for more comes back, the ability to have it even comes back.
Also,
Um,
do understand that we ourselves are burned out and tired and, and don't know exactly what to do. So it's just that we have tools.
right,
We our path by chance took us to where we had certain tools that help us to be able to manage that and deal with that. But I mean, everybody has those times. And so it's important that we do have people that can be supportive for us in that way. And when you mention the red blanket isn't the answer,
right,
but layers are the answer. The red blanket and the incense and the holding space for somebody and listening. Those are all important things that help those people to find some direction. And sometimes it takes professional assistance from somebody who is educated enough to know how to help people come up with a life plan. Therapists are there for a reason. They're great.
right. We'd file therapists under both stillness and movement.
So with the movement.
um, so in everything that we've spoken about, there's space for, applying one or the other. How could you know which you need? Feel for what's not there is the place to start. If you notice that there's a lot of busyness happening, then, like Katrina said, and I mean, it was a great targeted sentence. We are looking for the opposite. The universe works in balancing things out, so it too works in opposites. What's not there will be replaced. Or, if you have too much of something, the equal and opposite has to come in and level things out. So if we're approaching everything that way, I walked in my house and it feels kind of heavy and sticky and slow. What can you do to invigorate it again? Not from a place of needing to manifest something in particular or get something done, but just because you noticed a shift that or you noticed an imbalance rather. You can open a window, you can turn on a ceiling fan, you can start burning juniper or sage or what have you, but just attempt movement. You could go around with a bell and start clanging in every room or clapping your hands or, you know, um, have a dance competition with your family members in the living room. Like that's definitely going to wake up the energy. But, you're bringing in the opposite is the idea. Or if you're going to do, I mean, feng shui work is powerful too, and simplifying things to say, okay, well, the slowest corner in any house is probably going to be the south. And so you find the south section of your house and you put something that moves in that section. Or you want to bring in beneficial energy in the north because it's the most positive corner, then want to enhance more of that, you can bring in, I don't know, water again, move the fountain over there, burn a candle, what have you. Um, and then if you need stillness of some kind, heavy objects are another one we didn't bring up here. Heavy objects work great. Um, the shop, my crystal shop was facing the south. And we had my guru come from India. I brought him up a couple times on the show, and he was like, "Yeah, put about 25 pounds of tourmaline in the front room since it's facing the south." And I was like, "My God, like, dude, what do you mean 25 pounds of tourmaline?" We worked it out. But, to him, it was just like a passing, like, "Oh, go to Kmart, get yourself some tourmaline and do what I said." But heavy objects are the solution to, ease tense energy. And that's kind of what he was going for. Um, Ropes also, like if you need to create stillness or slow down in something, ropes and cords can be amazing too. Aren't those things used in like binding spells and things like that?
Sometimes, but a while back I switched from using any type of cord in a binding spell to using Gorilla Tape. And it works great.
Why? Let's hear that story. Like what
Oh, well, what I do with a binding is I've got little plastic cups. That's the binding vessel. And
okay.
I all kinds of banishing herbs in it, including juniper. And if I really want the person to get serious about why I'm binding them, I'll put some snake venom and some crushed red peppers in there. And then I close it up and shake it. And I also put banishing oils in there. I shake it really hard so the effigy is it really stuck down in there. And then I just bind it up that container with Gorilla Tape. And so I've got the person's initials on the effigy, and then I put the person's full name on the container, and then I write their name again on the outside of the Gorilla Tape. And once that little container is wound with Gorilla Tape, nobody's going anywhere. And
Nobody's getting out.
hang on a minute, I'll show you.
We have an example.
Oh, I already cleared them away. Oh no, there's one high. Okay. So I can't put the name, but this is a lady I did last week. That's what it looks like when we're done. It's all, yeah, she's not going anywhere.
Well, yeah. I mean, Gorilla Tape is what it is for a reason. I love that. I love the creativity around that, and I love the modern solution for an ancient problem.
If our ancestors had Bic lighters, they would use Bic lighters. That's the answer for that. So we used to do binding with cords. Now my primary use for cords is to do knot magic. By knot of one, the spell's begun. By knot of two, it cometh true. There's a whole chant that we do to tie something into a cord for later release. And that's what I use cords for now. So a binding, you bind somebody to keep them from doing something they're doing that you don't want them to do. You're binding them, you're restricting them.
Plain and simple. I'll use ropes and woven materials to cut energetic cords between people for sessions. And then to deal with karma. So if you're entangled energetically and you have some karmic things going on with a person, I will cut the ropes or, negotiate and unravel and things like that. And I'll do some Akashic record work with ropes and cords as well. But I like this gorilla tape thing. I
Good
might
stuff.
might have to talk to you further about that. Um, but one of the things that I love about magic and energy work is that the sky's the limit, and the rules aren't really rules. It's about logic and possibility, right? You're not going to use gorilla tape in something that needs movement because it's sticky and it's not meant for movement. And
Right.
so, you know, there is a logical process to it, and what you all can do from this point is come up with something very creative. I have this circumstance in my life. What can I do to change it? What small tools or large tools invoke the energy of movement or stillness in a way that I can benefit from? Is this entire conversation. So we hope that you have gotten something out of it. I know I have. Again, I'm like this gorilla tape thing. Um, and we hope that you can continue the conversation with yourself. What do you need? Start with what are your needs in each area of your life or each area of your home, or whatever your future manifestations or your healing from your past. What do you think? What kind of energy is needed there? And then go into using tools that work for you, tools that maybe other people wouldn't or hadn't considered before. But either way, we've opened the door to the conversation. We hope you take it further. With all of that, we'd love to see your comments and what you've done at home, how you've tried it, how you've made it work. And as always, you can always reach out and say, hey, I was thinking about this. And if you can't do the work yourself, help is available from both of us. But as for this community conversation, we are at that hour again, and we are going to bid you guys farewell. We thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next time on Crossroads of Cognizance. Bye, everyone.